All right, so the power just went out. It's been out for about 10 minutes. I had intended to install this manual transfer switch today. I got to it a little late. So a lot of friends have asked me to install these before. So hopefully this helps them out and hopefully it helps someone else out. Um, I've this is probably like my fifth one that I've installed. They've all been different brands. Um, the, they're all very similar as far as an installation goes. Pretty much anybody can do it. So this is what I'm installing. I ordered this on Amazon. Um, it's a Reliance controls manual transfer switch. This one has six 120 volt switches on it, and then two 40 volt switches that looks like they're all 20s, and then the 120 volts are 15s. So that's what you get. I ordered this as a return, so I saved about $100 on it. We'll put the link to this one in the notes. And I've done a little bit of work to get ready. These are made to install in on the exterior of the wall. I'm going to put mine in the cavity of the wall just because I think it'll look a little better. So I'm going to cut this hole and get started and then check back in. Just a reminder, if you're ever doing any work in your electrical panel, be sure and shut your main breaker off. And when you do shut your main breaker off, keep in mind that these lugs at the top are still hot. So I cut my first hole and I neglected to look at the other side of the wall, which pretty big mistake, pretty rookie mistake, but I did check to see where studs were and make sure kind of no electrical were running in. But if you look right there, that's the meter base on the other side. And I did a shallow cut, didn't hit anything, but yeah, definitely should have checked the other side of the wall before I started cutting. So moved over to this side. There's some mouse poop in there. And I'm gonna end up putting it over here. Cut out the bottom of this because I'm gonna get so I can have access to get in the panel, and I used a hole saw and cut a hole through. So I'm just kind of getting everything lined up. I'm gonna cut this here shortly, and then get everything lined up and see where I'm gonna install this guy on the outside. So we'll check back in after that. So at this point, I've got the transfer switch mounted in the wall. I put some blocking back in there to fill the void, and I knocked the hole out back here, and then used a long drill bit to mark the center of that hole, and then I pulled the transfer switch off and drilled that hole with a hole saw, starting on the inside and then moving to the outside. You'll see a plug in here because I was going to try and use 3/4, but I found that I didn't have any 3/4 stuff on hand, so I'm going to use 1/2 inch. I've got this cut, the flex here, to match up with that. Uh, the best way to cut this off is to use a pair of diagonal cutters and just cut this way, kind of nibble through it, and then carefully twist and slide the piece off over the wire so you don't damage the wires. Got my receptacle box for the exterior ready to mount. Um, the kit does not include the conduit to go between the exterior box and the interior transfer switch box. So you will have to get something for that. You could use a 3/4 flex, a 1/2 inch flex, or I only had EMT on hand, so that's what I'm using. I'm just using straight EMT on this Hardy plank. Um, Frequently, you'll have to make some kind of filler plate to go in between so it doesn't sit all wonky on there like that. So I just made this little filler plate. I'll come back and then caulk it later and paint it. So I've got my wire ran through here. 2 hots, ground, and a neutral. And I'm going to wire them up to the receptacle. When you look at the back of these, there's a X, a Y, and a W and a G. Obviously, the G is the ground. The X and the Y are your 2 hots, which will be your red and your black. And then the W is your neutral or white. The X and the Y don't really matter, which if you do black to one and red to the other, or you could just keep it in alphabetical order um, and go black to X and then red to Y, just to keep track. But I'm going to wire that up and go back inside. Okay, so you'll see here, this is wired up. I didn't mention that, so I used number 8 THHN because that's what I had. I didn't have any number 10 here at the house, so I didn't want to go to the store. You could use number 10, that's fine. Number 10 THHN. I would recommend it if you're going to the store anyway because it's a little bit harder to get this larger wire in the box. You also may see that it's nicked up a little bit because I'm reusing it, but it's just that surface layer, so I'm not worried about any arcing or damage. So the hard part's done. The transfer switch is wired up for the exterior receptacle. It's mounted, and I'm going to move on to hooking up my circuits that I want to have on the generator. When you wire these internal ones to the transfer switch, just be sure when you tug, once you put them in the wire nut, tug on them, make sure they're nice and tight and don't come loose. So before you start hooking up your circuits to your panel from the transfer switch, you want to figure out what circuits you want to have on your generator when the power goes out. One that's very important, obviously, is the refrigerator. Another one that's very important is if you're on a septic, be sure and get your septic in there. Aside from that, some lights. If you have a fan that goes to a gas fireplace like we do, I want to have that on so the fireplace will keep working and the fan will be operational if the power goes out. You also want to balance the load between your X and Y circuits coming in, like we talked about when I was hooking up the receptacle outside. So essentially, you want to have an equal amount of wattage or as close as possible between the two sides. So this whole side is the X side. This whole side is the Y side. So corresponding to the black and red wires. So you want to have, if you have 3,000 watts on this side. You want to have 3,000 watts on this side, or close to it. So when you're planning out, you want to what you're going to put on there. You can make that determination. Then, when you start to hook these up, the red wire will be labeled A through J, and there will be a corresponding black wire labeled A through J. So you take your red A and you hook that to the breaker that comes out of your transfer switch. And you take the corresponding black wire, which is right here, and you hook it to the wire that was on the breaker. So you pull this wire that was on the breaker and hook it up to the corresponding black wire that comes from the transfer switch. So I'm just finishing up here at the panel. Some things to keep in mind. As I was going through this, I was figuring out what I wanted to have on generator power. So kitchen, the fridge, fireplace, fan, my wife's office so she can keep working. Lights, this is lights in the kitchen and our great room. We have the septic and the garage, which includes the garage door, which is important to be able to open if the power's out, obviously. Then I labeled the corresponding breakers in here. I have 4 circuits left, and I'm going to hook those up later. I just bundled them all down here. We're planning on getting a freezer in the garage, so I'm sure I'll put that on and find other things that are important. I'm going to clean up some more with the zip ties and everything when it's all done. And then obviously I got a bit of drywall to do. But I'm going to go hook up the generator and see how she runs. So that's it. We ran the generator and everything worked like it was supposed to. I hope you found that video helpful.